Welcome to The Librarian, a program designed to inform and educate you, our listeners, on the importance of libraries in our society.
Hello, welcome to this educative and informative program, The Librarian. I'm your presenter, Kalumbu Lumpa. Laputa Library Partners is an innovative development organization that builds the capacity of public libraries to create opportunities for equitable education and poverty reduction. Its mission is to enlighten and enrich the lives of children and youth in sub-Saharan Africa, especially those not in school and highly vulnerable. Laputa constructs enduring, indigenously styled open access libraries stocked with comprehensive collections of well-chosen books and appropriate technology. These libraries serve as the safe havens and are the center for Laputa's programs, which offer education, psychosocial support, and self-expression through reading, music, art, drama, computers, mentoring, and other activities. Most of you probably know this organization as the Laputa Library Project, which has been making a noticeable impact in our communities by providing high-quality open-access youth libraries. But the organization's long-term commitment to the library profession in Africa through partnerships was better understood by the new name. Today on the program, I have in the studio Jane Meyers, President of Laputa Library Partners, and Sally Sinn, Laputa Library Partners Board Member. Ladies, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To begin with, just a brief introduction as to what, Laputa Library Partners is all about. Jen, you can take that up.
Okay. And as the founder of the organization, I can say that some things about Laputa Library Partners have evolved. Initially, this was a response of librarians seeing a situation in a country where library services were really not offered to support children and youth. And yet it was a country with a lot of challenges in terms of particularly a lot of teenagers, but also younger children who were not in school or were in highly vulnerable circumstances. And so some children may be lucky enough to be in school and maybe have access to a good school library, but we didn't see that happening that prevalently as well. And so it's really, we were inspired to create the organization because we saw a situation where libraries could help. And so what our aim is to work with our library colleagues in Zambia to create libraries that show the impact, that have an impact on society, focusing on the 70% of the population of Zambia that is defined as youth and children.
Okay. So what was really the core inspiration for the formation of this organization?
Okay, again, that question is for me because I was living in Zambia between 1998 and 2001 and was involved with a number of other professional activities. I should say that my colleague Sally and I are both professional librarians.
Oh, great.
Have been for our entire careers.
Okay.
I happened to be living here, though, for my second time living in Africa, with my husband's job brought us here. He was the IMF resident representative.
Okay.
And I was doing a few professional activities, but at the same time seeing the problem at that time of the burgeoning number of street kids in Lusaka. And that was a time where Zambia was really feeling the impact of the HIV/AIDS pandemic in terms of orphaning and children put into vulnerable circumstances. And so I also got involved with a drop-in center for street children in Kamwala called Fountain of Hope.
Okay.
And it was really, I used to go down and read to these children
starting
every week. Other people joined in, and At the end of our time here, we actually left a rather large collection of really excellent children's books in a shipping container someone donated that we converted into a very makeshift way of making these books that we didn't want to take home with us to the United States available. And it was after that, in the years after that, that we started hearing reports that this place, this prototype of a library that, sort of to put the question out there, would a library help these children, that it was heavily used, that there were children who were suddenly...
What is the primary focus for Laputa Library Partners?
I think as Jane has described, I would call the primary focus to develop a model for wonderful, excellent public libraries with programs of value to children and youth that demonstrate the importance of libraries in communities anywhere, not just Zambia, but even the history of my own country was so enriched by a vital public library program. It's where I went as a child to get books, and it's where it was a large part of my own development. So I feel very strongly that part of the primary focus of Laputa is to bring that same kind of enrichment to the lives of children and communities in Zambia, and to ensure that we develop a model that is sustainable, that can continue, and that library professionals within Zambia feel the importance of continuing the kind of work we're doing, and it builds a great structure within the country.
Lovely. For how long have you been operating in Zambia as Laputa Library Partners?
We were originally called the Laputa Library Project,
Yes.
and the organization was established formally in the United States in 2005, and at the same time, toward the end of 2005, we became a registered NGO here in Zambia. So when we became an organization, we began raising money to actually construct our first library. And this was a result of having talked about this for a long time, and I think we could have talked about it through my lifetime and my children's and children's lifetime. What we realized we had to do is to show what a library can be. So in 2006, we began constructing the first Laputa library, and it was hosted at the same organization that I mentioned before, at the Fountain of Hope in Kamwala, because we don't build these in isolation. They are built with a host organization. And so that library was officially opened in 2007, and the first Republican president, Kenneth Kaunda, came to that opening, as he has to our subsequent library openings. We opened our second library that is on the grounds of the Nguerere School at Garden Compound, and we are about to open our third library.
Good. So who funds this organization? How are you funded? How are you?
I'm going to defer that one to Jane.
Okay.
She wasn't prepared.
I mean, how we have been funded has evolved through time. Again, I can tell you it's not a small thing for a librarian deciding to actually start an NGO, and that has taken us in other directions. So initially, we really got a lot of our funding through the support of a lot of librarians and other book people in the United States and internationally. We were reaching out to our networks that had developed, over the years as librarians working in an international environment. And then we started to we were looking for foundation support, but that really doesn't work very well for getting money to actually construct buildings. Yeah. We certainly needed that, and building book collections and getting computers. So our second library, by that time, we had reached out to a different group of librarians, and I really want to tell you the details of this. Please, because sure. It is something that librarians really have fueled this in a large extent. They're the ones that get it. They're the ones that say, yes, what we do is really important to society. Let's help this organization show these countries how important good public libraries for children are. So, but there we reached out to another organization that I had been involved in most of my career, the Special Libraries Association in the United States. And those were colleagues who worked in corporate settings, maybe also law firms, and not so much, not in public libraries in general, university libraries somewhat. And a lot of them went to their companies to try to get corporate social responsibility support for us. So our second library was actually financed by Dow Jones and Company, an international business information company.
Okay.
And then our third library has been funded by Comic Relief in the UK.
Okay, good. You've mentioned that your major focus as Lubuto Library Partners is to serve vulnerable children out there. How has Lubuto's work impacted on the vulnerable kids in Zambia? How's the what's the response out there from these kids? Sally, please get to it.
I could say if you visited one of the libraries, you would see what a huge impact. But for many of them, it can be the only safe place they have to go.
Okay.
A place where they can feel safe and where they're actually nourished in terms of just their basic needs. But it's also impacted them in terms of the other programs. It's not just books and story time and a safe place, but they're able to learn a little bit about computer skills. There's a Lubuto literacy program helping them learn to read in the various languages. There's a mentoring program, extremely important for their development, and I think some of them have been quite proud to have graduated from Lubuto mentoring. An arts program. So it beyond the primary focus, it is intended to be kind of a holistic approach to their basic needs to help them cope with the world around them and also to help them understand their cultural heritage.
Having operated in Zambia for some time now, what still justifies your work here in Zambia? What's keeping you motivated to keep on going with this project?
That second question's a little different. The first one, the answer is we're just getting started.
Oh, great,
So,
great.
What keeps us motivated? That's something. Sally joined our board of directors in the United States some years back, and she might have a different perspective as a member of our board of directors. All I know is I can tell you, for the several years I was living here and working with the children at the Fountain of Hope, and really getting to see how amazing it was, how these children whose lives were so difficult would still giggle at Curious George, or the same kinds of things that children universally children have a need to be children. So that really got under my skin. There was a time when the senior vice president of Dow Jones and Company, we had asked her to join our advisory board. And she said, well, I just have one question to ask you. She said, isn't it too hard? Isn't it too hard? You've told me the stories about these children, the vulnerable children. And isn't it too hard to work for them? Don't you find it difficult? And I said to her, it would be if I had left Zambia after 3 years and went back to the United States where children are well served, where there is a stronger social safety network. By no means they're all children in good circumstances. I said that if I just went back to that and forgot about it, then it would be too hard. But knowing that there's something that libraries could do, that there is something within our power to do that helps those children, it isn't too hard at all. It's the only thing that makes life bearable, I think, when you know that there's a problem that you could address. And she said, great answer, I'll join the board. But what keeps going is, something Sally witnessed with me at one of our libraries the other day, a little boy who was a double orphan living with a grandparent, a 5-year-old who wasn't in school, and who clearly, when he came to these libraries, it has become a central part in his life. And what we're finding is that the children who flock to our libraries, that most of them come to these libraries every free moment they have. They don't have to come there. They have to go to school maybe, or they have to be at home. But here is this third place that they spend every other moment. Sure. It's maybe a mystery even beyond us.
Maybe you could just share with us some of the notable accomplishments you've made so far as Lubuto.
Okay.
Sally.
I'm going to address it from some of that I've been most involved with, and Jane can chime in with some others. But I'm certainly very impressed with the fact that Laputa doesn't just go looking for some used books or let's find collections of materials. We have spent time actually thinking about what makes a quality collection, ensuring that the materials provided to the libraries are appropriate, age appropriate, and that they cover a variety of subjects and things the children will be interested in. Then we have a new system, a way of inventorying what materials have been collected, what materials have gone to each of the libraries, so we can keep track of them, their condition, know when things need to be added or replaced. So we have put into practice for Laputa the same general principles that all libraries and librarians would use to develop and create good collections. So I think those have been some major accomplishments in terms of the infrastructure that supports all that we do. And, a new means by which we can identify this is a best collection for our Zambian libraries. Give that to an agent, a dealer who works with us, one of our partners, and they can prepare that collection. We can have it ready for Zambia much faster than the way we used to do it with all the volunteers. So I think with an infrastructure, we have made great strides in the last few years. I think the greater impacts, though, have been in the results of the programs and services and the impact it's had on the children. You just have to read their stories and think that it's not a huge programmatic impact that you can present and say, look, it's the individual stories that are so meaningful.
Great. You have two, libraries operating, one in Guerrero and the other one is a Fountain of Hope. Maybe you can just share with our listeners, how these two, initiatives are performing so far. Jen.
Well, I feel like that's sort of what we've been talking about, what Sally's been talking about this holistic approach. Before we opened the first library and talking to our colleagues here that we had worked with for years, sometimes they said, well, how are you going to get the children to use the libraries? And the answer was, how are we going to keep them out of it? I mean, that more than anything, I think, is the lesson. If we don't sit around worrying about creating a reading culture, we know that children will naturally respond to wonderful books, to participating in dramas perhaps based on books and take an interest in reading. We know that when you give children really excellent books, it's a natural. There's no culture that is eluding them. I want to say a couple of other things, though, because our focus initially was on the most vulnerable, and they are still the first ones we want in the door. But what we found is that really excellent library services for children are wonderful for all children, from the most comfortable circumstances or whatever. People like to come to read these books in these libraries. So we also have expanded to do a number of other things that librarians uniquely do in society that we realized there was still a gap here in Zambia. One of which is preserving the old literature for young people that used to exist. So we've created a digital collection, Laputa Collections, that's on a website, laputacollections.org, where we have gone back and we've found a number of the old books that used to be in print in various Zambian languages, and we are preserving them. And that is an ongoing effort. The other thing is innovating, and that's something that we and our colleagues, that's what brings attention to libraries. And so this Laputa literacy, these lessons for teaching reading based on the new government curriculum and designed by the same person who designed that curriculum, Dr. Joseph Mwansa from the University of Zambia. We've created lessons, computer-based lessons that children are coming and using to learn to read in our libraries.
Thank you, Jen. Now, just coming back to your relationship with the Library and Information Association of Zambia, formerly known as the Library Association of Zambia, and your relationship with the government of the Republic of Zambia. How can you describe this partnership?
Well, it's a very direct partnership with the government. We had our first MOU with the Ministry of Education signed back in 2008 after the permanent secretary at the time came to see our first library. I mean, again, it was a question of seeing is believing. And they said, yes, we want this. And clearly we were the one organization bringing the technical skills to the country with knowledge of how to create real and excellent, high-quality libraries for children and youth. Then in a couple of years later, we went to the Zambia Library Service, who finally, there was a person, they had a new director in place, and we've said, here are these libraries. We're not doing this as Laputa. These are all ultimately owned by the library profession and by the Zambia Library Service. Okay. And so our focus has long been then, or especially since that point, and we've developed a new MOU, and the Ministry of Education has asked us to build these libraries all around the country in tandem with the Zambia Library Service. So we work with them. We have worked with our colleagues in the Zambia Library Association since the time that I lived here. And we work with the Department of Library Studies, Library and Information Studies at the University of Zambia. Sorry, all of these groups have changed their names in recent years. And the Department of Library Studies has asked us to develop a short course in children's library services, which is something that's very much needed. So in both formal and informal ways, we are trying to build the capacity here, since that department didn't teach children's services, and it's a very particular thing. So we are really working with all of our colleagues to try to help people understand the very specialized field of library services for children and youth.
Thank you, Jen. Now, as we come, to the close of the program, what other, new communities do you intend to bring these libraries to?
Well, again, Jane will have more specifics, but I think the future, as far as Laputa libraries is concerned, is moving out from Lusaka into more of the rural areas and serving the people of a broader area, and in the long term, not necessarily restricted to Zambia. If this is a workable model and a good thing, then it has potential to be useful anywhere and not necessarily confined to. The success stories now are in Zambia, but it need not necessarily be confined to only Zambia.
And I have to say, I hope this program airs before November 21st, because I would like to announce to the whole world that we are opening our first rural library in a village called Napakuyu, which is 23 kilometers east of Monze in the southern province. It's called the Mumuni Library because Mumuni is the Chitonga name that means what Laputa means, which is enlightenment and light. We also are finishing negotiations for a fourth and fifth library, one in Lusaka West, hosted by an organization called Mtunzi that works with vulnerable children. The next one, though, we've been talking with a bank, and as a co-sponsor, along with our partners World Vision, who have sponsored our literacy programs, and there we are following the direction of the government. Where with these next libraries they want us to build, so that one's very likely to be in or near Chipata. Good.
As we come now to the close of the program, maybe I'll start with Sally. Your closing remarks. What message do you have to our listeners out there?
Mine are going to be from a rather personal basis, but I have found the work that Laputa does and the contributions, minor sometimes that they are, from me to the organization have been the most meaningful things I have done as a librarian since I sort of finished my overall career. And how much I've enjoyed learning about a part of librarianship, service to children, that was not my area of expertise, but I have learned so much, and I value Laputa and what it is doing to just a huge extent. My first trip to Zambia, I'm thrilled to be here, and I have seen Laputa on the ground.
Good. Thank you. Jen, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks, everybody has to come and see these libraries. Seeing is believing. I've just shown you a couple of pictures that I think just are
lovely
very
pictures
striking.
there. Yes.
Please come to see your closest Laputa library and join in and help us and join in with the community in reaching these children.
Thank you, Sally and Jen, for having joined us on this program. We now come to the end of the program. You have been listening to The Librarian, and today on the program, we were discussing the Laputa Library Partners. Our guest today on the program was Jane Meyers, President of Laputa Library Partners, and Sally Sinn, Laputa Library Partners Board Member. I've been your presenter, Kalumbu Lumpa. For comments and questions, you can text or call us on 0979 162338 or 0961 408294, or you can send us an email at thelibrarian@gmail.com. On behalf of my producer Kelly Kangwa and my sound engineer Mlenga Konde, it's bye-bye and God bless.
You have been listening to The Librarian. Tune in next time for another interesting program.